All right, you've been having some fun at Cinequest? All right. We set the intention the first day of Cinequest. We said, let's connect. And I think we've done a great job of that over the last 6 days. I think I've received now 1,212 hugs. And I got to tell you, that kind of connecting makes me feel really, really good. I hope that you've had a chance to meet some of the amazing people that have been here. Over 50 different countries represented at Cinequest this year. We deeply appreciate all of the visitors bringing this energy and love and connecting. And now, tonight, we're going to do a lot of talk and connecting in the space of transformation. One way to transform is through art, and we'll do a lot of that. And another way is through yoga. I got to watch these themes of Cinequest because when we had Discover 2 years ago, I discovered a lot in my life. And last year it was Transform, and I made a lot of changes. And Bikram Yoga was a huge part of that. And I owe it to a friend of Cinequest. Michelle Vennard has been a sponsor of Cinequest with Il Fornaio to start for 20 years, supporting us and loving us and bringing hospitality to our guests. And then she found her second calling, which was Bikram Yoga. So now we get a chance to show you what it's all about. So this is San Jose Bikram Yoga. And now please bring the Cinequest glove to Dr. Deepak Chopra.
Great to be here.
So, Dr. Chopra, to get started, take us back to your childhood. And could you talk a little bit about some of the various cultural and spiritual influences in your early days?
My father was an army doctor. He was trained as a cardiologist in England. And my mother was the real homemaker. And we traveled around the country because that's the army life. I mostly went to Catholic Christian missionary schools run by Irish Christian brothers. My friends were Hindu, Parsi, Muslim. The environment at home was very rich in storytelling, mythology. I think it was very magical, adventurous, mythical, imaginative childhood.
In your work, you talk a lot about the consciousness. And could you tell us all what that means? And further along those lines, higher consciousness and God consciousness and collective consciousness. Could you talk about that?
Consciousness in its fundamental state is the ground of our being, which differentiates into everything that we call reality. So consciousness differentiates into space-time, into energy, into information, and it differentiates into the world of physical forms. Consciousness in its fundamental state is beyond both the subject and the object of experience. So you, as the observer, and this room and everyone else in this environment, which are the objects of you, the observer, and the observed, they're both simultaneously co-rising expressions of consciousness. Today we know a lot about consciousness. Consciousness is non-local. Non-local means that it exists outside of space-time and causality. It is beyond space-time, because even space-time are expressions of consciousness. So that's one thing we know about consciousness. The second thing we know about consciousness is that it's a field of infinite correlation, which means everything in the whole universe, which is an expression of consciousness, is immediately, instantly correlated faster than the speed of light. Everything is in harmony with everything else. And biological expressions are really good examples of that. The human body, for example, has 100 trillion cells, which is more than all the stars in the Milky Way galaxy. Every cell performs at least 100,000 activities every second. And every cell is instantly correlated in harmony with, coinciding its activities with, synchronizing itself with all the other cells. How does the human body think thoughts, and play a piano, kill germs, and remove toxins, and make a baby all at the same time? That is non-local correlation. And you would, if you weren't using mathematical terms, you would say it's omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent. It's a field of infinite possibilities. Infinite possibilities. It's also a field of creativity. So everything that we express as a creative act comes from consciousness. All art, architecture, music, science, These are expressions of consciousness, not of your mind. Your mind is another expression of consciousness. And this creativity is also infinite. It's quantum. It cannot be programmed into a computer, because computer programs are based on what are called algorithms. This is a non-algorithmic, undefinable, immediate, instantaneous emergence, which is totally unpredictable. Therefore, consciousness is also a field of uncertainty. Consciousness is a field of intentionality. It's a field where intention organizes its own fulfillment. But since we have many other questions, I think I should stop, because I could talk about consciousness for the next 2 years. Oh, you asked about higher states of consciousness? So there are many states of consciousness, and each state of consciousness expresses its own reality. 3 states of consciousness that we're all familiar with are deep sleep, dreams, and waking. So we know what those are. You know, last night you slept, hopefully. There was a period where you were fast asleep and totally unaware, but at some level there was consciousness, because I came and made a big noise, you would respond. Then the second state of consciousness is the dream state, where we unload our karma and our imagination and our memories from our subtle body. The third state of consciousness is waking consciousness. Hopefully everyone is at least in that state right now. The fourth state of consciousness is called soul consciousness, where you become aware of the observer in the midst of the observation. So right now, as you're listening to me, try this. As you're listening to me, turn your attention to the one who's listening. So as you're listening to me, become aware of the listener. And if you feel a presence, that's your soul. It's not your mind, which might be saying, I wish I'd gone to the bathroom before the lecture. Your mind is a conversation in the presence of your soul. And when you have soul consciousness, that awakens dormant potentials, like intuition, like creativity, like insight, like imagination, the power of intention. But beyond soul consciousness is something called cosmic consciousness. Cosmic consciousness is when that soul that you just experienced wakes up in waking, dreaming, and sleeping. So your body is fast asleep, but your spirit is watching your body in deep sleep. Or your body is in dream state and your spirit is watching your body dreaming. Or your body is in activity and your spirit is watching your body in activity. It's to be local and non-local at the same time. What in Christian theology is called to be in the world and not of it. Now actors are very aware of the state of consciousness, because they play different roles. So there's a part of them that's in the role, and there's a part of them that says, that's not really me, I'm just acting it out. Well, when you realize that your present life is an act that you're putting on, and even in your real life you put on many acts. One day you're playing the role of a father, next day the role of a son, the third day the role of a businessman, and so on. It's your destiny to play an infinity of roles, but you're not the roles you're playing. And you, in a sense, are in the role and not in it at the same time. You are a spiritual being having a human experience instead of a human being having a spiritual experience. That's cosmic consciousness. And then beyond that is something called divine consciousness. So divine consciousness is when you feel the presence of the same consciousness that's in you in the objects of your perception. So you look at this, and this is a table, but it's also a piece of wood. It's also is a tree, actually, Therefore, it's rainbows and sunshine and earth and water and wind and air and the infinite void and the whole ecosystem. It's the lives of carpenters and their families and factories and trade unions and so on. You pierce that and there's a consciousness right here. When you become aware of the consciousness and the objects of your perception, not just here, but everywhere, then God is not difficult to find. God is impossible to avoid because there's nowhere that God is not. That's called divine consciousness. That's the realm of, you might say, the miraculous. We start to experience the miracle of life wherever you go. And finally, there's unity consciousness, which is that the observer and the observed, the consciousness and the observer, and the consciousness and the observed, they merge, they become one. And you realize there's only one consciousness, and the whole universe is the physical expression, the physical body of that one consciousness, and that you are that consciousness. So it's a progressive expansion from very limited awareness to unbounded awareness, and in each state you have different biology, you have different perception, different cognition, different emotions, personal relationships, social interactions, environment, the forces of nature, and even your biology, they shift in different states of consciousness. It's a little bit about higher states of consciousness.
So talk about the mind and the brain and what role they play in consciousness.
Okay, the standard, what should I say, theory in science is that your consciousness is an expression of your brain, so is your mind. That's the standard worldview. You know, that just like your gallbladder produces bile and your stomach produces hydrochloric acid, your brain secretes consciousness. In other words, if you fall in love, if you have ideas, imagination, if you believe in God or heaven or hell or salvation or damnation, this is the dance of molecules in your brain. And if you manipulate the molecules, you can manipulate what's happening in the mind. So that's the reductionist material worldview. But now, a new worldview is emerging that it's the other way around. Your brain is an expression of your mind, and your mind is an expression of consciousness, which, as I said earlier, is beyond space and time. So in the Bhagavad Gita, for example, when Krishna talks about consciousness, he says, water cannot wet it, wind cannot dry it, weapons cannot shatter it, fire cannot burn it. It's without beginning in time, without ending in time, which today we say non-local, same thing. Okay, the mind is an expression of that, but mind is outside brain, and that explains dormant potentials that these days people are talking about, like being able to look into the future or the past, or extrasensory perception, or precognition, or even creativity. These are expressions that are beyond the brain. So when you read Shakespeare, Shakespeare is not in the ink. Okay? So too, when I look for you, you're not in your brain. Your brain is the instrument through which you express yourself. And so you are the user of the instrument, not the instrument itself. The brain is conceived, governed, constructed, and exists in consciousness. So it's not that mind is in the brain is in the mind, and mind is in consciousness.
So you talked about the consciousness of this table here a few minutes ago. Can you talk about it in regards to art and art that is created?
Well, when I think about art, art is an expression of our spirit. To be an artist is actually to be a very spiritual human being. Art comes from going inside, whether you're creating music or a painting or writing a screenplay, any art. It comes from going within. Science comes from going out there. So creativity, when it comes from going into the world, or looking at the world out there, is an expression of our mind. And science, in many ways, is an expression of our mind. But art is actually the expression of our soul. Art is the expression of our spirit. And that's why, you know, what's his name? T.S. Eliot once said, poetry and art are a raid on the inarticulate. The art expresses the soul, the spirit of a person, but frequently it goes even beyond. It expresses the soul of a collective psyche. It expresses archetypal imagination. At least great art is more than a personal expression of the soul. It's an expression of a higher consciousness.
So you talk about that we all start as a little piece of DNA, and we very rapidly divide up into millions of cells. What is the connection of our body and our cells to the stars and the planets and the universe?
Yes, we all start out as a double-stranded DNA. And before that, actually, there wasn't even that. There was just a gleam in your father's eye when he went to a picnic with your mother. And we all start out in a field of possibilities. And that field of possibilities is in fact, consciousness in its purest state. And that then localizes in a double-stranded DNA. That DNA divides about 50 times. So, you know, one cell becomes 2, 2 becomes 4, 4 becomes 8, and after that, it's exponential. So within 50 replications, you have 100 trillion cells, which, as I said, is more than all the stars in the Milky Way galaxy. This process is called morphogenesis and differentiation, where every cell is tracking the activity of every cell instantaneously. And it's differentiated. The one is becoming the many, which is the fundamental way in which the whole universe comes about. The one consciousness, which we call the mystery that we call God, becomes the whole universe, which all its infinite diversity. So that's a process, as I said, of morphogenesis, giving rise to form, and differentiation, becoming diverse, multiple. The relationship between that and the universe is that your biological form is also a pattern of behavior of the whole universe. So you have rhythms inside you. You have biological rhythms. You have circadian rhythms, which have to do with the rotation of the Earth on its own axis. You have seasonal rhythms as the Earth goes around the sun. You have lunar rhythms as a result of the complicated movement of the Earth and the Moon and the Sun in relationship to each other. You also have gravitational rhythms, because about 70% of your body is water, and its response to the gravitational effects of the Moon and the Sun and the stars and the Milky Way galaxy and beyond. So there's nothing that's happening in your body which is also not happening in the rest of the universe, and you're instantaneously monitoring this because you are also a pattern of behavior of the universe. So again, in the ancient wisdom tradition of Vedanta, there's an expression, yatha pinde tatha brahmande. As is the atom, so is the universe. As is the microcosm, so is the macrocosm. As is the human body, so is the cosmic body. As is the human mind, so is the cosmic mind. By totally tuning into your own self, you can eavesdrop on the mind of the cosmos. So that's the great teaching of the wisdom traditions. You want to know what's happening in the universe, you don't have to get into a spaceship. All you have to do is take an inner journey across the seas of inner space.
So now that we've taken that journey, and it's time for us to pass our life here, what of our life continues on once our body is gone?
Well, your personal consciousness is a result of what we call experience. You know, who are you? You're a bundle of experiences. And in Eastern wisdom traditions, those experiences are called karma. Karma literally means action. Okay, so every experience that we have is because of a choice that we make. If I drink a glass of water, that's action, and that's karma. And karma, or action, or experience, creates memory. And memory then becomes the reason why we have imagination, and insight, and thought, and desire. So you might say that karma, memory, and desire is the software of our souls. The Sanskrit words for this are karma, sanskara, vasana. And every thought that you have is either a memory or a desire or something about the future. So we have only two kinds of thoughts, about the past and about the future, and they come from karma or experience. This is a matrix of potential thought forms, what we would call probability clouds, which actually manifested as the person you are. So when this body disintegrates, that matrix of thought forms, being non-local, which means outside of space-time, cannot be destroyed. Like, you know, if this, for some reason, we decided to, you know, make another building here, and the walls collapse and the roof collapse, nothing would happen to the space. It would still be there. Or if you and I were speaking on the phone, somebody cut the lines off. Of course, these days we can speak without the lines. But let's say the line of communication, the tower stopped working, you and I would still be there, but we wouldn't be communicating. So in death is, in physical death, what we call physical death is cutting off the lines of communication, although we know that, you know, the lines of communication actually can be maintained through other technologies, but in most cases, death is the cutting off the line of communication, but the karmic software, the matrix, the probability clouds of thought that are part of a larger matrix of thought forms are still there, and they're incubating before they take their next creative leap. So death is actually the highest expression of our creativity. Without death, we would all be doomed to eternal senility. It's how the universe recreates itself.
So you speak about life after death of the body and the continuation of the consciousness. What do you think about an artist's consciousness continuing in this world through their work?
Well, of course, you know, whatever the art form is, it's the expression of the artist's consciousness, and it, in fact, imbues other people and their consciousness, so the artist's consciousness evolves through other nervous systems as well. Continues to evolve. So today, many art forms can be traced to the consciousness of Picasso, but you can go back to Leonardo da Vinci or Michelangelo and all the way back to the Greek philosophers and their geometric thought forms, and all of that is still evolving.
So if you know that you are not your body, okay, you talk about this in your work, that you are not your body, that you are a spiritual consciousness, and that continues post-body, why should we spend so much time caring for the body that we're in and trying to prolong that life?
Well, I think, first of all, the body is the temple which houses your spirit. So it's a holy instrument for the expression of your spirit, and you would want to take good care of it. And today we also know that there are ways to prolong the aging process, to reverse the aging process, that even the biological markers of aging can be reversed. Things like blood pressure, bone density, body temperature regulation, and even things like skin thickness, the number of wrinkles. When I was introduced, did they tell you I was 150 years old? But today we have all these technologies to actually reverse aging. So today we speak of biological age, which is the age that we can get to through examination of your biology or your biomarkers. Psychological age, which is what mine is about 15 because I still haven't grown up. And then there is chronological age when you were born, and then there's spiritual age, which is, of course, in terms of millions of years of evolutionary time. So there's no such thing as a particular age. And with what we know today, it's possible to have the wisdom of experience and the biology of youth. As you know, Oscar Wilde once said, "Youth, oh, what a pity to waste so young." And today we can have the combination of the youthful biology and the wisdom of experience. That's why it's important to take care of it well.
When you think about religion, mythology, and spirituality, can you talk a little bit about the differences and the commonalities between the three?
Yes, we should first talk about mythology, because most religion is actually cultural mythology. And it's very interesting when you look at the word myth. The word myth is the same as the Hindi word mata or matrika in Sanskrit, which is the mother of the alphabet. And it is the root word for things like matter, time, measurement, Maya. Maya is the measurement of the infinite into the finite. And so mythology is the means by which the human mind tries to grapple with the mystery of the ineffable, the mystery of the infinite. And it's too bewildering for us to intellectually understand it, so we clothe it in mythology. And religion is the formal expression of that mythology. But religion is also founded on a spiritual experience, because the founders of religion had experienced these higher states of consciousness that we spoke about earlier. Then they were able to express it in mythical terms, and they were able to communicate an experience. Unfortunately, most people who hear about the experience, instead of saying, how can I have the experience myself, they end up worshipping the person who had the experience. So if I'm pointing to the moon, you should be looking at the moon and not worshipping my finger. But that's what happens. So we've had all kinds of problems with organized religion. Doesn't matter what the religion is. You know, we've had crusades, we've had witch hunts, we've had jihads, we've had communal writing, and it's true of almost every religion. You know, the Hinduism is supposed to be a non-violent religion. We've seen a lot of violence. The only difference is Hindus are vegetarians. So we lose sight of the true religious experience. The true religious experience is not only a state of the inexplicable mystery of our existence, but it's also the experience of inseparability, unity, love, compassion, kindness, joy at the success of even your enemies, and equanimity and peace of mind. Those are the symptoms of the religious experience. There's a connection, and yet there's not a connection. You know, we are seeing today, I hope, the emergence of a new secular spirituality that embraces the religious experience without getting tied down in dogma and ideology and fervent belief, because belief is a cover-up for insecurity. If something is real, you don't need to believe in it.
So art has the capacity to transform. Does the artist have a responsibility for the effects of their work on audiences?
Well, if we say the artist has a responsibility, we might in fact impose limitations on the imagination of the artist. A true artist is a free imagination. Now, having said that, the artist is also the expression of a collective psyche in a particular period of time. So the artist is expressing not only their own consciousness, but in many ways they're reflecting the cultural consciousness, the collective consciousness. In many cases, really great artists, they're aware of that, and yet they have a vision that is kind of rebellious. They speak with the rebel's voice. They paint or express themselves with the rebel's voice. They have a vision that they want to aspire to. They want to take you from the ordinary to the extraordinary, from the mundane and trivial to the magical and unbounded. So I would say a true artist feels that responsibility. And therefore, an artist also becomes the social conscience of a society. When you have totalitarian regimes, then the people that they're really scared of are the artists. Because the artists have the ability to speak to the collective soul. So tyrants or dictators or totalitarian regimes try to suppress the expression of the artist. Because the only person who can really bring about a transformation is the artist. No military can bring about a transformation, not even science and technology. Because science and technology are neutral. I can take science and make it diabolical by creating neutron bombs or biological warfare. But I can also take science and create an environment for healing and comfort and eradicate poverty, etc. So science is a neutral thing because it has nothing to do with our spirit. But art, being something that comes from our spirit, has a responsibility, provided we don't impose that as a moral duty for the artist, because that would restrict their imagination.
Addictions. So most of us have addictions, and artistic personalities seem rife with them. So it's my understanding you have transformed through addictions. What can you share with us about your transformation through some of your addictions to help others?
As a medical student and an early phase of my life as a physician, I was addicted to melodrama and also to adrenaline and also to cigarettes and sometimes to alcohol. And I was trying to help my patients, and I realized that I really was not helping them if I couldn't help myself. I also realized I had a deep insight that addiction is actually a spiritual exploration, because all addicts are in a sense searching for joy and ecstasy and even transcendence. So addictive behavior is a substitute for real ecstasy, not the one that comes in a pill. And addicts are also very creative people. They're the most creative people that I know. A lot of them are artists. So when we have that insight that an artist is actually on a spiritual journey and an addict is also on a spiritual journey, we have a deeper understanding of that. And we also realize that there is no cure for addiction other than a spiritual cure. If you can take the addicted person to a higher level of ecstasy or transcendence or joy, the addiction falls away. But there are no psychological treatments for addiction, only spiritual treatments.
So are there positive aspects to addictions?
Yes, positive aspects to addiction. You know, an addict will get their fix no matter what you do to prevent it. They'll get their way. They know how to be creative. So when you are, you notice your addictive tendencies, you should be asking yourself, what's the deeper significance of my addictive tendencies, and if through transcendence I can transmute them into a higher expression of my own art.
So people have said that fear is the opposite of love. And many artists deal with fears and frustrations in making their work, in getting the financial resources and the support for their lives and their art. Can you talk to us about this and how artists can transcend fear and frustration?
Yeah, I'm not sure I totally agree with that. Fear is the opposite of love. I know it's been said because fear comes from separation and love comes from unity. So this kind of expression exists, that fear is the opposite of love. Actually, the opposite of fear is courage. And love is the transcendence of both fear and courage. Love is this mysterious, ineffable force in the universe, which the great Indian poet Rabindranath Tagore said is the ultimate truth at the heart of creation. So when you're actually in that domain of transcendent love, there is neither fear nor courage, neither hope nor despair, because you got to a place where you are beyond both. That's a beautiful experience to have. Of course, yes, artists are frequently fearful, and I think that's a fear that's imposed by, unfortunately, critics and society. And so an artist will find that their artistic expression is thwarted by the critical acclaim or lack of. And you know, critics never actually ever produce great art. You should remember that. Okay? And true artists are totally independent of the good or bad opinions of critics, and that's the reason for their success. If you're going to be always looking for the approval of society, then you're not an artist in the true sense of the word. A true artist is doing their thing, you know, like Rumi says in one of his poems. I want to sing like birds sing, not worrying who listens or what they think. So my advice to an artist is, sing your song, period.
So you of course are extremely successful in your work and your life. What recommendations could you give for others to overcome challenges and setbacks?
Well, I would say first, re-examine your definition of success. What is success? Success is many things. It's a composite of many experiences. First of all, success is the progressive realization of worthy goals. And so make sure that your goals are worthy, that they are goals that will bring you joy, but also bring joy to those people who are affected by those achievement of those goals. That's the first component of success. The second is, success is also the ability to love and have compassion, because it doesn't matter how successful you are, if you don't have the capacity for love and compassion, you will and you're a miserable soul, then what good is that success? And finally, success is the ability to get in touch with the creative core of your being, your essence, which has so much creativity and so much to offer. If we examine success in those terms, then there are only spiritual means to success, and I've written a whole book about it. The rules of success, the law of pure potentiality, the law of giving, the law of karma, the law of least action, least effort, the law of intention and desire, the law of detachment, the law of dharma, which means to align the elements and forces in your consciousness with the elements and forces in the cosmos. It's a great adventure.
What about ego? Can you define what ego is and discuss the healthy role of ego in art and life, and also the unhealthy aspects of it?
Ego is built up as a result of identifying with our experiences and the objects of our perception. So it's our self-image, it's not our self. Your self-image is defined by externals. You know, how much money you make, how successful you are in ordinary everyday terms, the kind of house you live in and all that. You put them all together and you say, that's me, but that's not you. That's your sense of self and an image that you have created of yourself. Many people have said ego stands for edging God out, E-G-O. Not a bad acronym, because if your internal reference point is your ego, then you're always looking for approval. You're really afraid of criticism. You are either feeling beneath someone or superior to someone, and you live in fear. And yet your ego is also the personality that drives you in the world. So there has to be a healthy balance between your ego, which is your self-image, and yourself, which is your spirit. If you could shift your internal reference point to your spirit and recognize that that should be in the forefront and the ego in the background, then you've had a very good balance between the ego and the spirit. You cannot kill your ego, because even the desire to kill your ego is the ultimate melodrama of your ego. So, the best thing is to watch it. And when you watch it without being critical of it, then you're very aware of it. And how do you become aware of it? Whenever your ego dominates, because the ego is very local and the spirit is non-local, you feel discomfort in your body. So whenever your ego is acting up, you feel a little tightness in your stomach or your heart or spasm somewhere, you observe it till it goes away. And that way, becoming the silent witness of your ego actually helps you to overshadow the ego. There was a great Indian teacher by the name of Krishnamurti, and he said the highest level of human intelligence is the ability to observe yourself without judging yourself. That's how you handle it.
So for many, there seem to be inherent contradictions in gaining popularity and monetary wealth and the spiritual path, especially when people see evangelists or gurus losing the path and manipulating people for strictly monetary gain. Can you, an extremely famous and successful spiritual leader, talk about this?
I'm very lucky. I have a wife and children who don't take me seriously. As a result of that, I don't take myself seriously either. And so I've been very fortunate in not believing my press. And I would give that advice to anyone. Take it easy. And, you know, if you're joyful and playful, if you have a sense of humor, and you remember that everything that you have, including all the success in the world, is an impermanent pattern of behavior, then you'll stay centered.
So you've created in many different mediums. You made a video game about to teach meditation. Do you have any intentions of continuing in the gaming world?
Yes, I have. I'm actually working with a gaming company to create a game called Leela, the play of the universe.
When can we look forward to seeing that?
Well, it's in production right now.
So when you hear about world catastrophes, like what we've seen in Chile and Haiti recently, does this rattle your spiritual beliefs, your spiritual knowings?
No, the spirit, you know, being the ground of creation, has maximum diversity, from the divine to the diabolical, from the sacred to the profane, from the harshest anguish and suffering to the highest levels of ecstasy and joy. It's the play of life. Natural catastrophes are of two types. You know, when you have hurricanes and tornadoes and cyclones, I think we are beginning to see a relationship between that and human activity. If you destroy the forests, you change weather patterns and ecosystems and migrations of birds. These are natural catastrophes that actually can be traced to human behavior, to the whole schism between mind and body and environment, and therefore these are preventable. And in fact, we can reverse some of the damage that we have created, and we soon will have and already have the technologies to do that. Then there are natural catastrophes like earthquakes, which of course is a shift in tectonic plates. But even those are preventable with the future technologies, preventable in the sense we can prevent the consequences. You know, you can remove people, you can build structures that can withstand that, and we should be doing that. But we don't do it because, you know, we live in a world of extreme social injustice. We live in a world where 50% of the world's population lives on less than $2 a day. Of that, 20% lives on less than $1 a day. Social injustice, economic disparities, natural disasters and war and terrorism are all inextricably woven into our collective psyche. And unless we can heal our collective soul, we will see all of that. But if we have the courage to say that your interests are also my interests, that your poverty is my suffering, and if we can get to the level of compassion that the great wisdom traditions teach us about, then we can lessen these natural disasters. And we saw with what happened in Haiti, you know, it was an extreme devastation, but it was also, at least I had the insight that there was a lot of caring and a lot of compassion in the world. The disaster evoked our authentic level of genuine, authentic being, which says, I'm not separate from you. So if we can learn any lesson from these disasters, is that we have a responsibility to those who are not as fortunate as we are.
So along those lines, besides financial support, what can we do to help people who are going through those traumatic events?
I think there are many levels, even praying and meditating for peace, because we are peaceful beings at our core. When we get to that level, we influence the field of consciousness, because consciousness is a field. But then expressing that love in any kind of action, not just financial action, but any kind of action. Right now, I know there are yoga groups that are already in Haiti. There are immediate groups that are taking care of immediate needs, like food, like shelter, like water, and medicine. But then there are groups who are actually embarking on emotional healing, spiritual healing. This is an opportunity for all of us to actually enhance our own level of awareness.
So much is spoken about being in the present, in the now. And as an artist, we go back to our memories and our past experiences as a platform, and we also project into the future. Can you talk about the roles of the past and the visions of looking forward in the now?
The creative process actually has many stages. I could say first there is a vision. Secondly, a true creative person looks at the past. After they have the vision, they gather information, they resort to memories. So there's intended outcome, which is the vision, there's information gathering, there's information analysis, there's a lot of mental activity. But then there's a step that's called incubation, where there's a letting go. There's almost a detachment. Many times an artist will feel an immense amount of anguish before that happens, which in religious experience is called the dark night of the soul. And then you incubate, you step out of it, and then unpredictably there's a flash of insight, a creative burst, which is totally unpredictable. And if it is authentic, and you're not making a mood of it, then you feel inspired. The word inspired literally means in spirit. And then you integrate it with what you already know, and you literally incarnate into a new experience. Because true creativity is a death and a resurrection at the same time. And it's as I said earlier, true creativity is not situational creativity, which is you can do it through algorithms. This is a non-algorithmic emergence of something which is totally unpredictable. You know, whether it's a piece of music or a song or a story or a screenplay or whatever. And therefore, creativity has a process. Actually, I think anyone can learn to be creative because it's who you are. You know, we call that mystery that creates the universe, we call it the creator. And being a part of that consciousness, we're all creative people. Rumi, the poet, says, you're not just a drop in the ocean, you're also the ocean in the drop. So shift your attention from being a drop in the ocean to having the mighty ocean in you. And then you can be in the now when you need to be in the now. It's not all the time in the now. It is the surrender to the now after you have gone through the anguish of the past and the vision of the future.
So today you made an announcement about a project that you're working on, a film project. Can you share that with the audience?
Yes, the film is going to be called Beyond. It's an adventure into other dimensions. The director is Suri Krishnamau, who's an Indian-British director and has done a lot of films in England. And it's the story of a man who goes to India with his wife, and he's in Benares and he's watching a funeral, and as he looks at the body that's being carried to the burning hearts, beneath the shroud he sees a face, and it's him. And in the meanwhile, his wife has gone to a sari shop to do some shopping, and as the funeral procession has gone, he goes back into the shop and she's disappeared. And when he asks the shopkeeper, where's my wife? He says, there was no such person here. So she has been erased in a sense. And then the story takes him to other dimensions of consciousness where he goes to rescue her. As you recognize, it's a pretty standard theme, you know, loss and then the search for the lost one, the lost beloved, and the adventure, the hero's journey, the resurrection, and the coming back. He's shown a door, and he's told that if you go beyond the door, there's no coming back. But he makes a commitment to go beyond the door and to come back. The movie, in the story form, will explore other dimensions of reality with a deeper understanding that they all exist within our own consciousness. There's a Vedic text called the Yoga Vashishta. It says infinite universes come and go in the vast expanse of consciousness. They're like motes of dust in a beam of light that's shining through a hole in the roof. So unlike Avatar, which was exploring outer space, this explores inner space.
I'd like to introduce back to the stage co-founder Halfdan Hussey and Adita Rodriguez for a special presentation.
And now on behalf of Cinequest board, and most importantly to me, the many, many volunteers, the thousands of volunteers who have worked for Cinequest for 20 years to serve the world, the community of film artists, the community of students around the globe, we're very honored to present you with our Life of a Maverick Award on behalf of their service and yours. We have the honor of Dr. Deepak Chopra is going to come into the audience and talk a little bit more with you and you with him. So, Adita, shall we?
Can I touch on synchronicity? That's a word I invented. So you won't find this in the dictionary. Combination of synchronicity and consciously influencing synchronicity to create a destiny, so to speak. If you ask really successful people, what's your secret? And many of them would say, I was lucky. Some might say, I happened to be at the right time, at the right moment, and the right people showed up. If you're religious, you might say it seemed like a state of grace, or God was on my side. In a sense, they're all saying the same thing. An intention, whether it was conscious or subconscious, orchestrated meaningful coincidences. That's what we're talking about. Meaningful coincidences. Now, coincidence is an interesting word. Coincidence, many incidents happening all at the same time, in order to fulfill your intentionality. So when I started looking at the literature on synchronicity, and I also started looking at what ancient wisdom traditions have to say, there's a lot to be said about this in spiritual traditions. In Sanskrit, the word is Ritam Bhara Pragya. Ritam is the Sanskrit word, which means the rhythms of the universe, the rhythms of the cosmos. And so Ritam and rhythm are the same word. Bhara means full of, and Pragya means consciousness. So if a person's consciousness is aligned with the harmony of the universe, then they experience synchronicity, they experience coincidences, and when they take advantage or they are prepared for them, then of course they take action, which we call mula. And so I have been writing about this and teaching this for many years. How do we align ourselves with the elements and forces of the universe so we can experience or, in a sense, create our own good luck. Thank you.
Deepak, hi, my name is Jacqueline Mignell. I'm from Australia.
I'm going there in a couple of weeks.
Excellent. We'd love to see you in our country. I'm making a film called The Difference, and what it's about is gathering 6,000 people, difference makers from around the world, to respond to a question about love and joy. And I would like to ask you about love and joy. For you, what is the difference that gets us to a place in our lives where our life is absolutely full of love and joy?
Well, that's a really complicated question. These are the goals of all other goals. You have to ask people, what do you want? They'll say, well, maybe I want a Mercedes or a big house or a good relationship. But in the end, if you keep asking why do you want that, they all want love and joy. Now, what people don't realize is that those are essential features of the level of our soul. You know, you are a being of joy. You're a being of love. So there are 4 levels of expression. The first is being. When the child is born, it's pure being. That's why it's full of love, full of joy. The second level of expression is feeling. And feelings can be loving and compassionate, but feelings can also be destructive. Fear is a feeling, anger, resentment is a feeling. So when we sacrifice being for feeling, we are at risk of going either way, love and joy. The third is level of thinking. Third level is thinking. So, being is most primal, feeling is second, thinking is third. And if your thinking is intellectual, it totally robs you of your joy. But if thinking is creative, it actually increases your level of joy. And finally, the 4th level of expression is doing or action. If your action and doing is only for yourself, then it increases anxiety. But if your action is for everybody else, it actually increases your joy. So theoretically, you can use all these 4 levels of experience to increase your level of love and joy. Being through meditation, feeling through acts of love and compassion, thinking through creativity, and doing through service.
Excellent. Can I?
No, we're done.
You talked about So, considering that the world population has doubled in the last, I think, 40 years or so, and it's going up, and the resources are limited, as you know, would this not lead to like fighting? Will there not be even more social injustice?
So the question is, as our population increases, will social injustice increase because we have limited resources? And there are two schools of thought. One is that yes, it will. The other school of thought is actually populations that we thought were going to be problems are now doing extremely well. India is a good example. You're seeing that actually a large population has created a new economy because it's the fastest growing middle class in the world. And China is another good example where the population has become an advantage instead of a disadvantage. I tend to favor the latter view, that we will have social justice is not a function of our population, but is a function of our expression of our consciousness. As we expand our consciousness, and our consciousness reaches critical mass, then we will find new avenues to bring forth new resources. You know, I just had a conference in San Diego called Sages and Scientists for the last 2.5 days. And I was totally amazed at the creativity that is coming there. People are talking about using photons to create energy, not just the light of the sun, but the photons that are here, right in this atmosphere, the electromagnetic fields. Harnessing the waves of the ocean and gravity to create energy, or hydrogen, or free energy, which would fuel coming from the stars and stellar space. There is no limit to human creativity, and that will garner new resources. And as we expand our consciousness, the population also will start to diminish, because, you know, it's where do we see the most rapidly expanding populations is in places of extreme abject poverty. So when we, you know, according to the United Nations, and according to Gallup, where I was senior scientist at Gallup, the number one way to improve the world. Anyone want to guess that? One way to improve the world. Fastest way to improve the world. Service. The empowerment of women. I'm not making this up. This is based on really good data. The financial and economic and psychological empowerment of women as leaders is the fastest way to improve everything in the world, and that includes the humanity. Can I talk about unconditional love? It's a cliche, you know, that's all I can say. If you love yourself without conditions, you will love others without conditions as well. Because love begins with yourself. And if you have hatred for yourself, if you have guilt, if you have a conflict, you will not be able to give to the other what you don't have. So first take care of yourself and then express that in your actions.
So Deepak, how do we open humanity's heart to do that? How do we make
don't open humanity's heart, you open your heart. That's it. Stop trying to change the world. If enough of us say, I want to be the change, the world will change. Okay? We have no right, or shouldn't even have the desire to proselytize others. We should take care of ourselves. The worst thing to do is to have self-righteous morality about anything. It's just jealousy with a halo.
Can you expand on the concept of centering? You hear the word centering. Could you expand on that?
Centering simply means going back to your center, and your center is your soul. A little while ago what I said is you're listening to me, just turn your attention to who's listening. That was a moment of centering. That should be your inner anchor.
Is that anything to do with the navel? That's where you're born? Is that the part where you have to center?
No, it doesn't have to do with the navel. Well, I'm a person who loves technology myself. I think technology is part, we are in the center of the technological world here. Technology is part of the evolution of the human species. And if you look at children's brains, you know, we all worry about our children on games and Blackberries and all these wonderful gadgets. If you look at the brains of children who use games and technology, you're seeing such rapid evolution in a few months that would have taken a few hundred years, a few thousand years of biological evolution. So technology is actually an evolution of our species. Now, of course, there are dangers with anything that you create. It can be used for divine purposes, it can be used for diabolical purposes. That's not the fault of the technology. That has to do with our consciousness. I can create technology, as I said, to destroy the world, but we can create technology to heal. We know that the internet was not there till 1995. What is it? We are only in 2010. 15 years. You know, when the internet came out, did you think you would be able to email videos or, you know, send text messages to China and, you know, communicate with anybody in an instant? What is the internet? The internet is a field that is manifesting the Akashic field, the collective consciousness. And the internet is the human condition right now. It has everything, from pornography to the highest levels of human caring and creativity. So let us never criticize technology. It's us, how we use that technology. I think if we can create really interesting gaming technology for children with values that take them to higher levels of creativity and compassion and the sacred experience, that's the best way to...
I have been personally working on that, and I have been studying your work to take it into that particular platform.
Well, get in touch with me.
Yeah, how can I? How can I?
Still two more questions. Well, let's take one from the balcony.
Mr. Chopra, I just read your book. I'm sorry if I misquoted. Reinventing the Body and...
Reinventing the Body, Resurrecting the Soul.
It's very interesting. I read in your book you're an endocrinologist. Is that correct?
Yes.
I have type 1 diabetes, and I was wondering if there was any correlation between any type of meditation techniques and health benefits.
Any meditation technique.
And how can that go against the Western versus...
Yeah, you should start with something called the Soul of Healing meditation. And there are also lots of, read another book I've done called Perfect Health. You'll find lots of recommendations on breathing techniques and diet that will help you. And of course now, we are also talking about technology. We're in a very interesting time because very soon, in the next few years, we'll be able to coax your own cells to produce insulin through technology, through stem cells, through selective cloning, all of that.
One more, right here.
Thank you. Assuming that we are all part of a universal plan and everything happened for a reason, how much power do we have to change that by using the law of attraction?
Well, it's a very interesting question because you're actually asking a very fundamental question that people have asked for thousands of years. And that is, do we live in a deterministic universe, or is there room for creativity and free will? Well, if we live in a totally deterministic universe, then we're doomed, right? Then we're all zombies. There's no creativity, there's no freedom. So I would say to you that determinism holds true only for people who have not got in touch with their deeper self. Then they are bundles of conditioned reflexes, and then they are part of whatever is happening. But one of the features of the deeper fields of consciousness is uncertainty, the more and instability. In fact, the highest expression of creativity is at the deepest levels of instability and uncertainty. So I would say, wake up every day and say to God, make today even more uncertain than this. If you do that, then you imprisoned by determinants.
Thank you all so very much.
Hi, I'm Adita Rodriguez, and you're watching Inside Cinequest. I'm with Dr. Deepak Chopra. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. It was fun.
Thank you so much. Just a couple quick questions. I'd like to get your opinion. How do artists best deal with setbacks and the constant challenge of people not accepting their work?
I think an artist has to really realize that as long as they're dependent on externals, they're not going to find true expression of their inner joy. So you've got to learn as an artist to be independent of the good and bad opinions of the world and express your truest passion. I always remind artists of that poem of Rumi where he says, I want to sing like birds sing, not worrying who listens or what they think. So sing your song, and as long as you do it passionately, sooner or later you're going to strike gold.
Brought a smile to my face. Talk about the transformative power of art, please.
Well, art is a spiritual experience. Art is the voice of social consciousness. Art is also the rebel's voice. Art is a charismatic, idealist vision. Art is the anguish of the soul, the dark night of the soul. Art is death, and art is resurrection. And all these are different aspects of transformation.
You have been an inspiration to so many people. What we'd like to know here at Cinequest, as our theme is Mavericks this year, what Maverick people have inspired you and why?
Well, Maverick people that have inspired me started with my own parents. They were extraordinarily creative. They never were under the influence of social conditioning, or what I call the hypnosis of social conditioning. As I grew up, I had teachers in medical school who would say, put away your textbooks and imagine you were God and you were making a fat molecule or an insulin molecule. How would you do that? So instead of actually reading the book, we would come up with our own creative process. Later, I was exposed to people like Krishnamurti and books of George Bernard Shaw, Oscar Wilde, Sinclair Lewis, and many others, Somerset Maugham, that were all kind of at the cutting edge of what was conventional thought, but going beyond that. So it's been a multiple of influences.
Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank
we
you.
appreciate all of the time you've given us, and
Thank you.
can't tell you thank you enough. Thank you.
Thank you.
Turn right here, please.
Okay. Thank you.
You can just by yourself, only do one. Just have you just like hold it out and yeah, just like that. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
Was the